Hey there, welcome to another Curtis Stage video tutorial. Today's tutorial is in Photoshop. We're going to be making a sunlight flare. This demo is taking an image that did not have sun in it and adding a sunset in it. So let's get started. So our final image is going to look something like this. I've got this picture of this model, and this is what we want to shoot for. Now, this image didn't look anything like this, and so we're going to open that image up in a second. Let's open up a new file. So we're going to go up top to File, New, and we're going to select inches over here on the right hand side, and I'm going to make the resolution 200 and the width 11 and the height 7. So this is approximately the size of the image that we want. Everything else looks the same. That's all great. And click Create down in the bottom right corner. All right. Now we're going to before we bring our images in, I like to save this file. This is the Photoshop document. This is our working document. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. You're going to find some place on your desktop. Hopefully you have a folder for this class that you're going to save it in. I'm going to call it Sun Flare. You can name it the name of this demo if you want. You're in my class. So I'm going to do that. I have a folder already created for that. Click Save. There we go. Now what I want to do is I want to open up the folder that I have the image in, and you'll be downloading this image either in Canvas if you're in my class with me, or on YouTube. I have the image there. So I'm going to open up this folder right here, and you'll see that the image is right here. And I'm going to drag this image into Photoshop. It's going to be a smart object. I'm going to deal with that in a second. So I'm going to size this, just make it fill our screen like that, something like that. Click OK. Perfect. It is a smart object. Let's open up my layers. I'm going to expand this out just a little bit here. I'm going to make my window just a tad larger. And if you click this open, you can see that. But if I click that right here, see these two little buttons. What's nice is you can really save space in Photoshop, especially if you're working on a laptop, by collapsing your panels down just to the icon. So this is the way to uncollapse it, the way to collapse it. These little two arrows right there, really great. And then you can, when you uncollapse it, you can change the size a little bit. I mean, you don't want it this big, but you can alter the size there of that panel. And when you collapse it down, you can also alter the size of the panel right there too. So it really saves you space. If you start knowing what these icons are, you can have it like that. So I'm going to open that up. You can see that this image is much darker, not as exciting as this image, right? So first of all, it is a smart object. We could leave it as a smart object. Just so you know, again, what a smart object, it's connected to the file that's in that folder. So if I make any changes to that original file, it'll update to here as well. So I'm going to convert it to a rasterized image. So I'm going to go to Smart Objects and Rasterize. There's multiple ways to do this. I can go to Layer, Smart Objects, Rasterize, or I can go to Layer up top, Rasterize, Smart Object. That way it's not connected to the file that I have in my folder directly. So if I moved that file or edited that file, it won't affect this file. There's some reasons why I want to use a smart object when I really want images and files to be working together, but in this case I don't want that. So here we go. I've got this image here. Now I'm going to start by creating a gradient. We're going to create a layer that a gradient's going to go on. So I'm going to add a new layer down at the bottom of my layers panel. The gradient's going to go right here. This is going to be the sun flare gradient, and I can name this sun if I want, or sun flare. It's light flare, so I can do something like that. And then I'm going to go to my gradient tool on the toolbar. If you don't see this gradient tool, if there's any tools that you don't see in any of my demos, let's say you're working on a demo and you open up a tool and you don't see a certain tool, you can go down to these three little dots on the toolbar, open that up, and what's going to happen is you can edit this toolbar and go and restore the defaults. Sometimes that helps you. All right, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to go up to the options bar, and this will open up the gradient editor. So I'm going to click right on this options bar right up here, and click right on the gradient itself, and it opens up the gradient editor. Now there's some pre-made gradients in here, right? We've already got some of the gradients in here. So if I go to the reds, let's say, there's plenty of ones that might look like a sunset in here. Something like that, something like this, you know, I don't know, right? Something like that. So I do want one that has kind of a white to red and with an orange stop in the middle. So I'm gonna edit, let's see if an orange has one of these. No, it's just kind of yellow to orange. That looks pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this oranges folder, and I'm going to click on this one in the middle right here. If you open this bigger, you can kind of see this a little bit. So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one in, right? Fifth one in. And I'm going to move this stop that's right here, this stop right here, I'm going to move it into the middle right here. Okay. Then I'm going to create another stop right there. So I've got this stop in the middle. I've got this stop on this. So I've got 3 of these. These little boxes right here are all called stops. So this is the color stop. Up here is the transparency of the image. We're not going to mess with that today. So on one side of this, I want to have a white. So I'm going to click this yellow. When I click that stop, I can edit the color right here, double click it, or I can double click the stop itself. But if I double click this and bring this over to white and click OK, so now that's white. If I click in the middle, I want this one to be orange, right? It's pretty orange, but let's click it and move it up a little bit more to orange like that. So you can see these numbers here. So somewhere in this area right here, 255, 120, 0 for the orange. So red 255, green 120, blue 0. Perfect. And then this one we can leave as is, but let's just make it pure red. So I'm gonna bring my little hue slider all the way down or all the way to the top, and then I'm gonna bring this circle all the way up into the corner. That's gonna give me pure red. And if I look at that, let's look at that again. Pure red is 255, 0, and 0. So R is red, 255, green is 0, blue is 0. That's pure red. So I'm going to click OK. Great. Now we can click OK to this. We've got our gradient that we want. And we could save that gradient, by the way. So I kind of clicked it closed too early. Let me edit that gradient again. So when I'm on this right here, before I click OK, I could go here and say sun flare, right? Type that in, give it a name. Leave all this the same. It's got type of gradient. I'm going to leave it solid. And I don't want to click OK just yet. I want to click New. And then that's going to give me a gradient in my list. So this gradient editor, these are the presets, but now I've got some gradients that I've created. And I'm going to click OK. Now I can click OK. So I've got that there just in case. Now, I want to, up on the options bar, I want to look right here. There's different kinds of gradients. So let's take a look at this. So the first gradient is a linear gradient. I'm just going to pretend, we're not going to use the linear gradient, but I just want to show you if I draw from top to bottom or bottom to top, that's what it looks like. If I draw from top to bottom, that's what it looks like. That's the linear gradient. We're going to actually use this gradient right here, right? I'm going to start from the middle and go out, something like that. But I just want to show you what all these gradients do. So something like this for this diamond one. We're going to use this one right here, the second one in, but I just wanted to show you what some of these do. So that gradient, and the last one, which I never use, that gradient, although it could be cool. Anyway, so when you draw it, you can see, let me go back to the radial gradient. When you draw this, you're clicking your mouse and dragging, and you can see that it'll create the gradient. So click and drag in whatever direction you click and drag in, that's going to kind of give you the direction of the gradient. And this will be really, you know, interesting when you start figuring out how to do this. So if I go to the linear gradient and I draw from left to right, it's going to give me a gradient from left to right and vice versa. Corner to corner, can see how that is kind of working. So whichever way you draw it. Now the longer you draw it, so I'm going past, you can see how I'm going beyond my canvas, it's going to be a smoother gradient, and the shorter I draw it, it's going to be a more harsh gradient. So we'll be using this more this semester in my class, and more demos, but the longer, right, smoother gradient, shorter, more harsh gradient. So let's go back to this radial gradient. And what we want to do is we are going to apply the radial gradient kind of in the center of this. Okay, so to get started then, what we're going to do is we're going to make a circle gradient, essentially. And this is going to be the best thing to do would be to, just draw this gradient kind of from the center out straight up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift down on my keyboard so I can draw a perfect straight line and something like that. Right, let me Command Z or Control Z and do it again. So I'm holding shift down. I'm going to kind of get in the center, and I'm going to drag up maybe, I don't know, looks like somewhere like that. So the circle's like this big. I can go a little bit bigger. Let me start in the center, hold shift down, kind of go up towards the top. Yeah, something like that is good. So I want kind of a circle that's about this big right here. Now what I want to do is I want to create a mask on this. So we're going to create a circle above this. It already looked kind of like a sun, and you definitely want the white in the center, by the way, right? So I'm gonna make a selection around this and create a mask out of that selection on my sun flare layer. So let's create a selection first. I'm going to go up here to my selection tools that are the rectangular marquee tool. It looks like this, but I'm going to hold my mouse down and pick the elliptical marquee tool. So I want to make a circle. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my mouse right in the center of this gradient, and I'm going to hold shift and option, or shift and alt. If I do that, it's going to radiate out from the center. Look at that. So basically, if I hold down shift and option or shift and alt on a PC, I want to get like something like this and let go. And then I've got a perfect circle going around that sun. And you can move it with your arrow keys. It's not going to do anything. You can move it around. You can switch to your move tool. But if you do that, look what's going to happen, right? So you can move it with your arrow keys just to kind of, oops. Well, once you go to the move tool, you're going to cut, right? So don't do that. So if I go back to my selection tool and move it, do you see how it's not cutting a shape out? I'm moving it around. Look at this. Taking my mouse and moving it and getting it right over that sun where I want it. But if I went to the move tool and moved it, do you see how it's taking a chunk out? So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go back to the selection right here. And now I'm going to create a mask. So let's go down to the bottom of our layers panel. And the mask is this icon with the square or rectangle with the circle in it. Click that. And we've got a mask there. Perfect. It's exactly what we want. You can see the structure of what we got going here. We've got the mask on the right of this layer. The black hides everything to the left, and white reveals everything to the left. Now the black that's hiding to the left, hiding this, but revealing down below. So black kind of hides and reveals at the same time. Masks are non-destructive, so I didn't want to take an eraser and do anything with this. I wanted to kind of use a mask so I can go and edit this, kind of make it the way I want. Now let's make the edges of this mask soft by opening up the properties panel on the mask itself. So I'm going to go to Window up top here, and I'm going to open up Properties. And when I get to the Properties panel, then again, anytime that you're on the Properties panel, any tool you're on, any layer you're on, the Properties panel is going to kind of turn into that object. So if I go down here to Feather, look at this. I can go down to Feather, and I can feather this mask now. I'm not feathering the sun over here, the lens flare that I made. I'm actually feathering the mask. It's really nice. So I'm kind of blurring the edge, right, with the feather right here. I don't want to go too far, right? I still want to see sun. So I'm going to kind of, I don't know, looks like it's maybe like 130 pixels or something like this. Something like that. So I'm blurring the edges of this mask. Awesome. Now the properties panel I'm just going to kind of put over here and just kind of keep it off. I'll put it on this side, keep it down here off to the side. Now I'm going to go to my move tool, and I can move this sun where I want it. Now the key to this, of course, is I want to click on the sun on this left side, not on the mask. Although it doesn't matter, I could move it either one, but I want to be on the habit of only moving the mask or editing the mask when I'm on it. And if I want to actually do something to the the image or the thing that I've drawn, in this case a gradient, then I want to click on that object. And you can see there's a little frame around it. So now I can go to my move tool on my toolbar and I can move, oops, move the wrong thing, go to my move tool and I can move this around. See this? I can put it right on her face if I want. Right, I can move it around here and put it up in this area right up here. And notice the mask and the image both are moving together. If I turn this, if I take this little chain link here and I turn that off, then look what will happen. I can move one independent of the other. It could be a cool look, right? But then my mask and my sun flare are moving independently of each other. I don't want to do that. I just wanted to show you that if you unlink this, the mask and this will move separately. Let me do it the other way. Let me click on the mask and move it around. So now I'm basically moving the mask shape over here. Look at it, you can see it right there. It's not capturing the sun, it's capturing red over here. So I'm going to undo that. Link those back together. I just wanted to show you that again. Okay, I like this the way it is, but I want to blur it just a tad. I think it needs to be just blurred a little bit. So I'm going to put a filter on this. And I can put the filter on either one. I can put it on the mask or the actual sun object. So I'm going to go up to filter and blur, and I may do both. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And when I do this, it's going to blur the mask a little bit, maybe about 100 pixels probably, or 90, 100, something like that. Your blur may be way down here, and so it may not look like anything's happening. So I'm going to bring this up to, I don't know, about 100. Let's just say 100, and I can type that in if I want to, and click OK. I can also blur this too. So if I click over here and blur the object, the gradient, I can go to Filter and Blur and Gaussian Blur. Gaussian blur is just a type of blur. So I can pull this down. I want to see this sun. So I'm going to zoom out. I want to see this thing. And then I can blur that a little more, a little less. I still want some of that white in there, so maybe I don't want to blur it that much. Somewhere in there. Right, so that's pretty good. Again, I can move these around and kind of get it where I want. Now, what I want to do is I could see what, a blend mode looks like on this, and there's some blend modes that might be kind of cool. One thing that I'll do is if I go to normal here, you just kind of look and see if any blend modes are going to work. Remember, blend modes are great because they're saying, how does this layer interact with this layer, right? How could we blend these two layers together? So every once in a while a blend mode could be good here, but I don't know that we even need it. I'm looking through here, and it's, unless you wanted to go extreme and do some weird stuff, I don't think blend mode's going to really work on here. So I'm going to keep that normal for right now. But I do want to kind of adjust the overall feel of this layer here. I might want to make a curves adjustment layer above her, so that I'm now then going to adjust kind of the color tone going on in Carol here, in that Carol layer. So I'm going to make a new, I'm going to click on Carol right here, click on the Carol layer. Down at the very bottom, I've got this icon right here, and you can see that there's a bunch of different possibilities. So I'm going to go to the curves, and my properties panel is going to come into play again. So I'm going to go to curves, and this adjustment's not going to affect the sun, it's only going to affect her. So this way I can go in here and I can go and kind of look at some of the, let's see, I can go in here and kind of just go to the reds and just give it a little bit more red. See what I did here? I went to the specific red channel. So RGB, it's all the channels. But if I go just to the red channel, I can move this up or down. See that? I don't want to go too far up. So I'm just kind of putting it. I can see kind of where the reds, these spikes right here are called histograms, and they are representing the color of light and dark of the color. So I'm guessing that spike right there is red. And it's just slight. I don't want to do a lot to this, just a little bit. It was looking a little dull. So something like that. So you can see my input is like 144, my output's 143, and output 174 on the red channel. I can go back to the RGB channel and kind of change all of them and kind of just see. I can brighten the whole thing up a little bit. Kind of do something like that. So curves, what it's doing is it's adjusting what's called the chroma, or the color in an image. Again, you can do it all together, red, green, and blue, or you can do it just each channel, right? So I can go to the green channel. There's not much green in here. And I could push more green into the image, which kind of could look cool. Just a little bit more. But I want it to have that sunset look, so, and maybe a little blues. So it's getting purpley. And I'm kind of down in here, 88 and 108. I'm just messing around in here. So green, here's my settings for that, 136 and 160. Kind of looks cool. Look, I can turn this off. See how dull that image looks without this curves adjustment, and how it brightened it up and gave it a little bit of red tone. Awesome. I'm going to add one more on here. So I'm going to click on Carol again, and I'm going to go down to the bottom of my layers palette, click this button here again, and there is a couple other ones we can do. I'm going to go to color balance, and color balance is going to, again, kind of give me a similar thing that curves did, and I can go into the, I'll stick with the midtones and see what that looks like, and kind of go just a little bit red and a little bit yellow to get that orange feel, right? I want that Southern California golden hour situation. So I'm bringing the yellow over to the left, and I'm bringing the red over to the right. So I've got kind of a negative 33, let's say. It's a random number, and plus 20. That looks really good, right? Again, let me turn that off. See that? Just enriches. Look, I'm going to turn all these things off. Look at the eyeballs. There we go. I mean, I shot this in a raw format, and I knew that I was going to be editing this photo later and adding color and possibly creating an effect like this. I actually shot her at sunset, but this is right after the sun went down, and I have more possibilities if I didn't have that sun on my camera lens, which is better anyway for my camera. I don't really want to ever shoot the sun directly with my camera. It's not a good idea for your sensor. So I wait just till after the sun goes down, knowing that I can go back in and recreate all of that look, and nobody would even know. I'm going to go back up here and click on our image layer of the gradient, and I can go to the opacity and bring that down a little bit too. I can bring the opacity down. It doesn't have to be like full on. I can bring it down just a little lower so that it's not so extreme, right? Something like that. And I can also bring the fill down just a little bit too. Maybe the fill could stay up. The opacity maybe at 80, something like that. Looks pretty good. And again, with your move tool on that layer, you can move the sun around. You can put it over here if you wanted to. Might look kind of cool. Put it over here if you want. Raise it up. Now if you see a little line at the bottom of this, it's because the bottom down here has a little bit of a line, so you don't want any edge on there. So if you see a slight edge on the sun, right, if you see a slight edge there, you can take your eraser tool and kind of hit that and kind of get a soft brush. So you'll get a soft, the hardness is all the way down to 0, and so you can just pick the soft round right here, something like that. Close that down, and then on the bottom of this you can kind of look, and I can take all these off, and see that little edge that's right there? I just don't want that, so I'm just gonna soften that up a little bit. That was too much, but just kind of hit it a little bit. I'm just clicking, I'm not painting. If I just click, it's gonna soften that up just a tad, maybe something like that. And then I'll turn these back on and I can see them again. There we go. So I don't have that now. It's really nice. I could do one more thing. I could have a layer right on top, above this. So I really like this golden hour light that's on here. I could put another layer up above and do another gradient. Let's do one more gradient. This time we're going to pick a blues gradient. Sometimes it's good to kind of counteract oranges and reds with blues. So I'm going to go up here to, let's see, I've got purples. I don't know where my blues went. Hopefully I didn't erase those. So inside the purples, I can go to this blue one right here. That one's pretty good. And I'm going to close that. And I'm going to draw this gradient at the bottom, going up. Oops. I actually want to go to a linear gradient right here. I had that. Okay. Now I can see what this blend mode down here kind of does. So I can go, yeah, screens kind of cool, lighten's cool. I think I want to go soft light, possibly. Actually, you know what I want to do? I don't want the gradient to be fully colored in here, so I'm going to undo this. What I want to do is I want to go to this gradient editor, and I like the dark blue. I'm going to go over here and click this stop up on the top on the light blue side. I'm going to go to the opacity and make it all the way down to 0. So now when I paint, right? Oops, wrong direction. When I paint on this, I'm going to reverse this. So I'm going to go up to the top and reverse it. See how now it's reversed? See the little button right up here on the options bar? I can reverse. And I've got transparency checked. Now I can paint from the bottom up and put a little blue at the bottom. And now let's do this. Kind of go in here and hard lights, maybe a little. That's kind of cool. I like hard light. And then I'm going to go to the opacity and bring that down a little bit. I just want some like blue in just to counteract that orange just a little bit. So I'm bringing the opacity down to like maybe 40 or something. That looks really good. Either way, I mean, I like it. You don't have to have it, but it's kind of cool. It just adds a nice balance to it. All right, so there you have it. We've got a nice sunset flare image behind Carol. There's the before. Not a bad image, but there's after. It makes it much nicer, much cooler. And so that's our tutorial, and we'll see you next time.